Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, and today I'll be going through my April reading wrap-up. I finished 20 things in April. I finished 8 books and 12 graphic novels, and I am going to tell you all about them in order of least enjoyed to most enjoyed. There's a lot to go over. There's 20 things in total, so I am just going to jump right into it. Least enjoyed, and this was a real bummer because I was really enjoying it for like the first 2/3. This Report from the Interior by Paul Auster. Paul Auster's New York trilogy I finished at the beginning of the year, and I loved it. I really dug his like mysterious writing style. He doesn't write a lot of straightforward narrative, at least in that trilogy. You really have to kind of apply yourself, meet him halfway. This is an autobiography, so you would think it would be a bit more straightforward, but it's not. This is an autobiography, a mental one that begins at least of just like stuff that he remembers from the ages like 0 to 12. So the like the random thoughts that you would have when you were a little kid that were really stupid, but they made sense to you because you didn't have any other context. It's like a collection of that. Like, for example, a simple one is thinking that there was truly a North Pole, like a white and red striped pole at the North Pole to denote like that's where it was. I feel like everyone had that thought at some point. So that is really fun. That's part 1 of this book, and I liked it a lot. It was really relatable, and it was kind of funny. Part 2 is him talking about 2 movies that had a huge impact on him as a kid, which was I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, and The Incredible Shrinking Man. I think those are the names of the 2 movies. And that chapter is literally just him describing those movies from beginning to end, but doing so from the perspective of like an 11-year-old who's seeing them from the first time. And again, I really liked that section a lot. I thought that I was going to enjoy this whole book. But then part 3 comes, and part 3 was so unbelievably boring. It ruined the entire book for me. I would never read this again, and I wouldn't recommend it. Or I would recommend it just stop after part 2. Part 3 is him basically just recounting these love letters that he wrote to his girlfriend when he was in college, and like living overseas. And it's so uninteresting. Like, there's a little bit of a narrative there for you to follow, but there's nothing super catchy about it. And it was really just really dull. So that's what put this way at the bottom of my list for the month. I'm about to go on a run of comics right now, because I read a lot of mediocre to like decent comics this month. So here I've got Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives, written by Dan Waters and Ram V, with art by Matthew Roberts. This is part of Image's Universal Monsters line. Obviously, this is the Creature from the Black Lagoon one. These are like spiritual sequels, spiritual reboots of these Universal movie monsters. So I talked about the Dracula and Frankenstein one in past videos, and they're just reimaginings of that story. This one was pretty disappointing. I like the Creature from the Black Lagoon movie a lot. I think it's one of the better Universal movie monsters. This one is it's fine. It's about a journalist who goes to the Amazon to hunt a serial killer that almost killed her as well. And she comes across the creature at the same time. There's some good art in here, but the story overall, I think, is pretty weak and just kind of ends and nothing super impressive happens. So a bit of a bummer there. All right, here's a weird one. This is The Twisted Tales of Bruce Jones. This is a 4-issue series from Eclipse Comics. I don't think it's ever been collected in paperback. I'm going to make my own version of this because I liked this. I like this enough. If you don't know, Twisted Tales was a comic series that Bruce Jones wrote primarily in, what was it, the late 80s? Something like that. I get my timelines mixed up. But it was kind of like an EC Comics, riff. It was a really fun series that had some great art from artists like Bernie Wrightson, Richard Corbin. Twisted Tales of Bruce Jones is a successor to Twisted Tales, but the thing is that Bruce Jones is writing and drawing this one. He's also doing the art here, and his art is just not that strong. It's not consistent, I would say. He is really good at like a single page splash or pinup. Like there's some really beautiful images in there. But as far as his storytelling goes, his artwork leaves a lot to be desired. It's really all over the place. Some of it's incomprehensible. Some of it's just plain ugly. So it's fine. I'm like keeping that in my collection for the handful of really great pinups that are in there. But more so, he's a better writer than artist, I would say. Next, I've got Shade the Changing Man, Volume 1, The American Scream. This is written by Peter Milligan with art by Chris Bachalo, inked by Mark Pennington. This is a DC Vertigo title from the 90s, and it was fine. I kind of expected to like it more. Shade is a strange character. It was one of Steve Ditko's later creations, about this guy from another dimension called Meta, who has something called the Madness Vest, or the M-Vest, that allows him to change his own appearance, change things around him. And what's happening in this book is America is experiencing some kind of strange madness epidemic that's called the American Scream. It's leached out of a specific area of madness, an interdimensional area of madness. I'm doing a bad job of explaining it, but kind of like so does the book. It's really loose and it's really weird and esoteric. There's some really nice art in here. I think Chris Bachalo has some really interesting compositions. I think Mark Pennington does a good job with the inks. I wasn't in love with a lot of the writing, but some really cool images in there. There's a JFK assassination subplot in here that is one of the better ones. I'm always down for a good comic reimagining of a JFK assassination. I feel like I've seen like 5 at this point, and this is, a pretty good one. But overall, it's just okay. Another comic, oh my goodness. Jessica Jones, Alias, Volume 1. This is by Brian Michael Bendis, illustrated by Michael Gaydos. This is the first appearance of Jessica Jones and her first 2 story arcs. She is a private investigator. She's a former superhero turned private investigator. It's a great concept for a character, and I love the character. I think Jessica Jones is really fun to read. I love the hard-boiled attitude that she has. I love her past as a superhero and her trying to separate herself from it, and her just trying to make ends meet as a struggling PI. That is, I think, the strongest part of this. I think the storylines themselves are just okay. The first one finds Jessica accidentally recording Captain America. Captain America's true identity. In this particular time in Marvel, Captain America, it's not known that he is Steve Rogers or vice versa. So she accidentally gets it on camera, like him changing, and she has to track down like who put her up to it, who hired her, why did they want Steve Rogers like caught like this, blah blah blah. And it's fine. The ending really disappointed me because it's, in my opinion, a bit of just a Deus Ex Machina, and something that really bugs me in like detective fiction is when the person who's doing the investigation isn't the one who solves the crime. Like, to me, that is it's just cheap, and like, what's the point of reading it? I had the same issue last month when I read Confess, Fletch, because he spends that whole book investigating something and then he's not the one who solves it. And I was like, this is what do I need Fletch for then? What do I need Jessica Jones for? Anyway, it was fun. It was good. And I'm not a huge fan of Michael, what's his name? Michael Michael Gatos's artwork just wasn't really for me. Another comic, Catwoman, Guardian of Gotham, written by Doug Mensch with art by Jim Ballant and inks by Kim DeMolder. I like me some Jim Ballant Catwoman for obvious reasons. I like his figure drawing. I like his figure drawing in the 90s more so than now. And Doug Mensch is one of my preferred Batman writers, although I've got several Batman stories. Well, I've got one other one to talk about today that I didn't like as much. This one's fun. This is an Elseworlds story in which Catwoman is the main superhero in Gotham, and Batman is a villain. And so just, turning the roles on their heads. It's just a good opportunity for Jim Ballant to do what he does best, which is draw really sexy women in tight catsuits. And so for that alone, this gets a big old thumbs up from me. Another Batman comic. This is Batman Venom, which was originally serialized in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, issue 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. This is Batman gets addicted to steroids. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's written by Denny O'Neil, art by Trevor Von Eden, Russ Braun, and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Really great art. Story's pretty solid. I don't have too much to say about this one. This one's pretty readily available. I believe there is a trade paperback of this that's still in print. It's a fun one. Batman losing control, drug addicted, some fun stuff in there. He is a bit of a whiner. He does whine quite a bit because he's just, I'm so addicted to drugs. So not the kind of Batman you're really used to, at least not me. 32 Stories, the Complete Optic Nerve mini comics by Adrian Tomina. I did a video about this collection as well if you want to see more about it, but this is a reprinting of the mini comics that Adrian Tomina did that he called Optic Nerve before he got picked up by Drawn and Quarterly to do like proper Optic Nerve comic books. These are all the self-published ones that he did that he, printed off at Kinko's and stapled himself. And really neat to see his progression as a writer and artist as these 7 issues go along. But overall, they are just good. More than anything, this is like a completionist thing to have. If you just love Tomina's work, this is just a neat artifact to have in your collection. But it's not as good as his actual Optic Nerve comics. And is this finally the last Batman thing I'm going to talk about? No, it's not. I've got, believe it or not, one more after this as well. But this is Batman Bloodstorm, also written by Doug Mensch with art by Kelly Jones and John Beatty. This is a sequel to Batman Dracula, Red Rain, which I did read and I own a copy of. I do not remember anything about it. I believe I only kept it because I love Kelly Jones's Batman. He's a very divisive Batman artist because everything is so extreme, but that's exactly what I like about it. Like, I love the super overflowing cape. I love the crazy long bat ears. Like, it's ridiculous. It's unrealistic. And it's super fun because that's what comics are supposed to be. Super fun. In this one, look at that Batman. In this one, Batman, as a result of what happened in Red Rain, he is a vampire. And now he is trying to rid Gotham of the other vampires. Because he's a good one, he won't drink blood. He's got a substitute that he uses, but it's wearing off. It's causing some problems. This one also introduces the Joker as the main villain, which Joker rallies the legions of the undead in Gotham to take over. He's not himself a vampire, but he schmoozes his way into being their leader. It also introduces Catwoman in this world, in which she is bitten by a werewolf, a vampire who shapeshifted into a werewolf, and it turns her into an actual Catwoman at the full moon. So more opportunities for some sexy Catwoman drawing. Kelly Jones isn't as good at it as Jim Ballant is, but still a lot of fun stuff in there. It's just fun. That's the main thing. Not Doug Mensch's strongest writing again, but the art really makes it work for me. All right. No more graphic novels for a little bit, at least for a couple books. Let's talk about a book, Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates. I did a full review of this one on the channel. This is one of her most recent releases. It is a historical fiction novel about the father of gynopsychiatry. So it uses real life, like historical medical journals to create the world here, but it's basically about this an 1800s version of an incel who becomes the head doctor at a women's facility for mental illness, and the terrible experiments that he does on them in the name of science. It's a tough read. It's very graphic, but it's written in the style of medical journals, so it's not like overindulgent. It's not disgusting like that. It's just like shocking and just like, it's yucky. It's very yucky. So I don't recommend it to everyone. Check out my full review for more information. Rumpelstiltskin by Ed McBain. This is the first Ed McBain book I've read that's not part of the 87th Precinct. This is one of his Matthew Hope novels. Matthew Hope is a lawyer, not a detective. And in this case, a friend of his, a lady friend, who is a musician who's over the hill and she's trying to plan a comeback. She is killed and her daughter is kidnapped after he spends the night with her. And so he assists the police in their investigation, trying to track down, who done it. Solid. I don't have too much like glowing praise for it. Ed McBain is great with dialogue. His dialogue crackles, it sings, it's wonderful. The plotting here is fine. It's a good mystery. It's a satisfying mystery. You can't really go wrong with Ed McBain, I think. All right, back to comics. You got a little bit of a break, but we got to go back now to talk about Art Spiegelman's Breakdowns, Portrait of the Artist as a Young, expletive deleted. So I picked this up after seeing the documentary Disaster is My Muse. Art Spiegelman, Disaster is My Muse. It just released recently. I watched it on PBS. It's a documentary about his life, and it references this book quite a bit. It's a really great documentary, and if you want to just see the actual art and the book that a lot of it is referencing, I do recommend this. I recommend it's a really solid movie because you get to see not just Spiegelman talk about himself, but you get to see him like footage with him talking to Robert Crumb. You get to get footage from other cartoonists like Bill Griffith. There's other people who know him talking about him. Really solid, really good documentary. This book, great. It's mostly collecting. Well, it is collecting Spiegelman's work before he did Mouse. So it's his underground comics. It includes his very famous, what's it called? Prisoner from the Hell Planet. Prisoner on the Hell Planet, which is about his mother's suicide and his feelings about it. But it also just covers all the other just like random underground stuff that he did. Your enjoyment of it will vary depending on how much you enjoy underground comics. I've mentioned in the past, I am okay with undergrounds, but they're not my favorite. I do like more like narrative-driven stuff that you could sink your teeth into. But some just great artistry on display in that book. And if you are a true comics lover, I think that's something that you just need to have in your collection. All right, something very different here, and I didn't, yeah, I guess it makes sense. I tried to put it somewhere in the middle because I don't feel qualified to talk about poetry at all because I am not a poetry reader, but I read a poetry book. I read Splice by Anthony Baruso. And the reason I read this book is because I know Anthony Baruso. We went to school together a lot. We were in the same school together all the way up until college. It wasn't until we graduated high school that we stopped being in the same school together. And I was very surprised. We kept in touch like on Instagram. And I was very surprised to see that he wrote a poetry book because I knew the kid in high school, and Well, he didn't seem the poetry type when I knew him. So I had to check it out. I was very curious, and I like this. I'm not great at dissecting poetry. I know that it's just supposed to evoke a reaction in you. Like there's supposed to be, short things that make you think and feel, and there were quite a few in here that made me think and made me feel. One thing that I liked about this that I think made it accessible for somebody like me is he is very much influenced by popular culture and entertainment. So there are multiple poems in here about like famous people. So there's one that's just called Bill Murray. There's one on Francis McDormand. There's Steve Buscemi. There's one funny one that on Pete Davidson, because me and Anthony and Pete Davidson all grew up on Staten Island. I didn't know Pete. I have a friend that knew Pete. But there's some like Staten Island Easter eggs in there. What did catch me off guard in here were there are quite a few poems that Anthony wrote about a medical condition that he had. He had to have brain surgery, essentially, about like a decade ago or something. I forget. And he's putting those experiences, the doctors, the surgeries, in these poems, and I really was caught off guard by like how affecting they were, and just really well done. So Anthony, great job. If you guys dig poetry, check this out. It's really nice. All right, now I've got the last Batman book that I'm going to talk about, Batman the Cult, written by Jim Starlin with art by the great Bernie Wrightson. This was a 4-issue mini-series. I managed to grab the set at a recent small convention. This was fun. The best thing about this, I would say, is obviously Bernie Wrightson's artwork, because everything that he draws is just incredible. But what I love most about this is Jim Starlin knew who his artist was, and so he gave Bernie every opportunity to do what he does best. So this is a Batman story. And Bernie Wrightson excels at horror, like zombies and werewolves and things like that. So where would that fit in to Batman? Jim Starlin finds a way. He finds a way to give Bernie a couple pages where he gets to flex those muscles and show what he's so great at. The storyline here, there is a man who's leading a cult in the literal underground of Gotham, he's rallying all of the homeless and terrorizing the people that live above ground. They've got a weapons cache, and they've got numbers, and they're just picking people off, and they kidnap Batman and they brainwash him. And a lot of the story is Batman overcoming that brainwashing, and trying to disband the cult, trying to take down the leader, who may or may not be immortal and is many years old. Really good story. Love to see Bernie Wrightson doing like superhero stuff once in a while. It's definitely not his strongest suit. Horror definitely is, but there's some great horror moments in here. There's some great horror artwork, and the coloring by Bill Ray complements Wrightson's artwork beautifully. Like, this is a very pretty book to look at. So that's why it's so high up on my list. Next up, I've got The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. I've been meaning to read this one for a very long time, but I didn't want to buy it because it's barely 150 pages, and it's like $17 now. And I'm sorry, but a novella length thing should not be $17. I don't care what it is. That's too much for a novella. Not to mention the font size in this book is enormous. Like, it's like a children's book font size. But the content is very much not a children's book. This is the book that the movie Hellraiser is based on, the introduction of the Cenobites and the puzzle box that you solve and you summon them, and then they take you down to hell, and they tear your soul apart for all eternity. It's a really good novel. I was actually very surprised. I'm not a huge fan of the Hellraiser movie. Not my thing. Love horror movies, love gore, love practical effects. Hellraiser doesn't really move the needle for me. Clive Barker's prose I was a fan of, though. I think he did a great job of expressing and getting into the head of somebody who is in a relationship that they don't want to be in. They fell out of love with this person, and just the what's going on in their head comes across very clearly. It's a well-paced book. It's very quick. There's also enough explained where you don't feel like you're completely in the dark, but there's also enough left ambiguous that it's not overly explained. There is still mystery here. That you get the sense that there is much more to this world, and we only get to see a glimpse of it. And that makes it a huge success, in my opinion. On the complete opposite end of the content spectrum, I've got Volume 5 of Bone by Jeff Smith. This is Rockjaw. Bone's just great. It's hard to explain, like, in the middle of book 5, like, what's going on. So, I mean, either you've read it at this point or you have it, or you haven't. But Bone's a lot of fun, and I've been really enjoying it. All right, we are down to the last 4 here. The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon, I don't know. This was right up my alley, because this is another historical fiction. I don't typically read a lot of historical fiction, and I've read like 3 in the past 2 months, and I don't know, maybe this is like a new thing for me. This is a fictionalized account of the golden age of comics in America. It is about 2 young Jewish artists, Joe Cavalier and Sammy Clay. Sammy is an American. He's trying to make it big in the art world. He loves comic books. His cousin, Joseph, escapes from Prague, Nazi-occupied Prague, to the United States. And he is an incredible artist. So they end up teaming up. Sammy introduces him to comic books. So Sammy plots and Joe draws him. They create a character called the Escapist. And it's about them trying to, succeed, make money. Cavalier wants to bring the rest of his family over to the United States to get them out of the country. And Sammy, of most of this book, is his own coming of age and coming into himself as a homosexual man. So there's a lot going on in here other than just the comic stuff. I think what kept me going was the comic stuff. I don't know that I got along with Michael Chabon's writing style all that well. And I think if this book wasn't about comics, I probably wouldn't have been able to finish it. But that being said, it was. So I really enjoyed it. The comics bits were my favorite part, but there's a lot in here. This book won the Pulitzer Prize, so it is like literature. So even if you don't like comics, it's something that I think has the literary fiction points that you probably do look for in a novel. Next up, I've got The Hunter by Richard Stark. This is the first Parker novel. I actually wonder if I think I probably should have had this below Cavalier and Clay, just a little bit. They're about even. But this is a cool edition. This is a hardcover edition. It's the first time it was ever printed in hardcover. It features illustrations by the late, great Darwin Cook. This is about a character named Parker who is a thief, a master thief, and he is betrayed on a job, and this is his story of getting even. Really great. Richard Stark was the pen name of Donald Westlake. It clearly has a great command of suspenseful writing, of action writing, cracking dialogue, like really like similar to Ed McBain in just that hard-nosed type of main character. It was very enjoyable. I liked it a lot. I'm gonna continue reading this. I'm also gonna continue reading the Darwin Cook graphic novel adaptations of the Parker novels. I just need to see which ones I find first. Next, all right, we're in the top 2, and this is going to be the best novel that I read in the month. The Dream Hotel by Leila Lalami. I also have a full review of this one up on the channel. This was great. This is a novel that is all about the dangers of not reading the terms and conditions before you agree to them. It takes place in a world where our digital footprint and our dreams are monitored by a private company who gives us a risk score based on all of that information. They use an algorithm, they use AI, They don't use humans to do so. And whoever has too high of a risk score gets retained to a private facility where there are technically rules, and those rules are broken by the guards all the time. And the goalposts are changing constantly. We'll put it that way. I recommend checking out my full review for a lot more information about why this book is so great. But it is. This is another one that hits those like literary fiction marks, even though it's sci-fi. There's a lot that it says about AI, about technology in our world and our over reliance on it. It's saying things about our private prison systems. There's a lot of layers to it, and it's really special, and I loved it. But the best thing that I read this month was a graphic novel, Perla la Loca, a Love and Rockets book by Jaime Hernandez. This is the final collection of Jaime's Locas stories from the first volume of Love and Rockets, and it's terrific. I mean, Jaime's artwork has been incredible since the very beginning, but what's more impressive here is how good his storytelling and his writing has gotten. The balancing of characters, there's just a huge cast of characters that he's able to fully flesh out. There's no such thing as a throwaway character in Love and Rockets. Everybody has something about them that makes them unique and makes them memorable. Now, I will say that if it wasn't for the cast of characters at the back of the book, I would lose track of a lot of these people, just because there are so many of them. And I don't have the brain that's like wired to be remembering everybody, especially if I put the book down for a while. Like, he does a good job of differentiating them visually, but it's just literally a matter of remembering. Like, who is this again? Okay, I get it now. And then you're back into it. So in this one, Maggie and Hopi, the unthinkable happens. They break up. They're no longer friends, or they're no longer attached to the hip as they have been for the entire series. So they each go their separate ways. And this is following each of them as they go those separate ways, and they try to find just the next thing for them. So like Maggie ends up spending time at her aunt's wrestling camp, and she's dealing with, she ends up going on like this apology tour at the end of the book, because she makes so many people upset, and she hurts so many people's feelings, and she just keeps making it worse and worse and worse, no matter what she does. It's just, there's, again, it's so layered. It's hard to talk about Love and Rockets in a succinct way, because it almost needs its own video essay about each character and just where they've come from and where they've gone and how they've arced and things like that. It's so special. So Love and Rockets, I've been super impressed by. It's lived up to the hype. And that was my best thing that I read in April. I'm done talking. I don't know about you. You're probably done listening to me. People turn this off after 2 minutes probably. But I'm done. I am. I'll see you again in May. Let me know if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on them in the comments below. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.